long time ago now. I was 12 years old. I was supposed to be in bed. It was about 10:20 at night. The last thing on my mind that day was UFOs, but that was about to change. At that time, my bedroom window was right by the edge of the waterfront. And lo and behold, here comes this orange orb. Basically just an orange ball. And this was just moving along the coastline like this. Well, this was too much for me to ignore, and although I was supposed to be in bed, I can remember, it's very strange, I grabbed the jacket, ran down the stairs. My mother and father were saying, "Where are you going?" I said, "I've got to go to the corner store." I said, "I've got to get something. I got a bad stomachache." And they're like, "Whoa, stop, no," and I was out the door. I ran down the hill to the waterfront, which was just a few blocks away from our residence. And that's when the fear hit. You look around, you realize you're totally alone there on the waterfront. And, I know I'm already in trouble when I go home. And now there's something I can't understand coming closer to me. Silently just drifting only about 10 feet above the water, tracing the shoreline. You had this fear inside. You're not thinking in words, but I can remember the feeling. What would it be now? 53 years ago. It was like, you're thinking at the time, if I run, it'll be like when you run from an aggressive dog. That was my introduction to the UFO phenomena, up close and quite scary.
But Chris Stiles wasn't the only one introduced to UFOs that cool October night. Almost 300 kilometers away, just an hour after his sighting, the residents of the tiny fishing village of Shag, Harbour got the biggest scare of their lives.
It looked like a flaming ball of light, flew over the town.
No one really could identify what this was, but it was odd.
Around 11:20 p.m., the sky was so clear and transparent you could see the faintest of stars. The moon had already sat some hours before. People who were outside at the time, they were mostly out in cars driving around, young people with girlfriends, people just with time to kill, insomniacs, whatever.
Among them is fisherman Laurie Wickens, out for a drive with some friends.
Laurie Wickens was a young fella at the time. He was out with some friends of his. They were just driving up and down the roads out of boredom. And they witnessed the strange lights in the car and watching them descending toward the water's surface. Now, in those days, of course, nobody has a cell phone with them. There was a payphone on the road. So they raced up to that, and Laurie went in and called the RCMP. And the first question he has for Laurie is, "How much you been drinking?"
But what Chris, Laurie, and dozens of other witnesses saw that night was all too real.
He's about to re-enter the vehicle, and suddenly the payphone rings. Laurie answers the phone. "Stay there," he goes, "we're on the way." And the reason the RCMP called him back is 6 other witnesses had called in from different locations to report the same thing.
Some witnesses describe several blinking lights, some a bright orb. Others claim a mysterious glow emanated from the depths of the ocean. One thing's for sure, something truly inexplicable crashed into Shag Harbour that night, something that could very well be out of this world. The lives of many witnesses, including Chris, would change forever.
The fear subsides, but it becomes replaced with obsession. And the reason for obsession is the need to understand what you've seen. Why do we still not have the answers?
Shag Harbour is a very quiet, small fishing town. Not much happens. And then one night, people wake up to this mysterious crash in their harbor. And shortly thereafter is a massive descent of journalists and police and military.
When this was seen to fall into the ocean, the first reaction was maybe it was a plane crash, which actually made it more important to investigate.
People went out there looking for survivors of this plane crash, they thought.
What they found instead is difficult to forget and even more difficult to explain.
There was this eerie yellow foam stretching for about a half a mile from where the craft had been to possibly moving underwater.
This object submerged under the water, leaving behind a sulfuric smell. And so these witnesses were certainly quite concerned about what they saw.
The military and RCMP spent a lot of time combing the ocean. We do know that divers had gone down there. Nothing had been found.
This really created a mystery for these witnesses, all who had seen certainly some sort of object or vehicle enter into the water.
If it had been a conventional craft that crashed into the water, there should have been wreckage that was found. Something would have turned up. The plane would have been registered as missing.
How does a giant craft disappear without a trace?
It's a small town where everyone knows everyone. They're all going to talk to each other about this. So it's like the rest of the world gets one story, but the people who live there know the full story. They know the real story.
And the real story is a haunting one. The strange foam on the water's surface, the piercing smell of sulfur. Locals start to wonder, what was this craft?
There's many different kinds of stories about what this object may have been. If this was an alien craft that fell into the water, that could then move under the water to different locations, and that's why there was nothing documented or recovered.
Some people in the area swore that under cover of darkness, something was taken out of the ocean, loaded onto a flatbed truck and covered with a tarp and driven away. Further stories that something was actually found under the water but had moved further away from Shag Harbour to an American military base, suggesting that there was some activity going on underwater as well. What exactly was going on, we don't know, but we do have the evidence and the documents to suggest that something unusual occurred at Shag Harbour back in 1967.
The story of the UFO that crashed into Shag Harbour came and went as quickly as the tide, when nothing was found underwater. But for those who saw it, out of sight is not out of mind.
When I got the call from my grandfather in Shag Harbour, I remember him telling me some people didn't go to bed for days. They thought something might come and fall on their house or their equipment or the fishing boat. And I can remember thinking, well, I couldn't believe that nobody had spoken to all the witnesses and pulled the responses together. And I thought, well, I could do that.
In 1992, Chris Stiles dives deep to uncover the origin of the mysterious craft that left him paralyzed with fear as a child.
Nobody was even aware of Shag Harbour whatsoever before I began reinvestigating in 1992.
Chris Stiles went out to try and track down exactly what happened.
He really ferreted out the information and talked to the locals and put together a case far better than anything that the government ever did. They got more government documents relating to Shag Harbour than I believe any other downed UFO incident that we have on record.
Shag Harbour has been described as Canada's Roswell. What's interesting is that it actually has more supportive evidence than Roswell. We have documentation from the RCMP and the Canadian forces that suggests something really did crash into the ocean.
There's a cover-up as a result of it. That is the case with Roswell, that is the case with Shag Harbour. Something important happened at Shag Harbour, without a doubt.
Chris Stiles is determined to find out what that something was, and he may finally have a break in the case.
I talked to the divers of the Fleet Diving Unit. They were like, well, you know about Shelburne, don't you? You know, that's the real story. Shelburne County has a curious history before that time of anomalous events. Everything from sightings of sea monsters to sightings of Bigfoot.
While a very public investigation was taking place at Shag Harbour, up the coast at military base Shelburne, a secret operation yields a shocking discovery.
What the divers told me was when they went down, they found a second UFO in the seabed and that it was rendering assistance to the other one. And the two divers that spoke of this actually claimed that they saw beings in the water doing this. And I'm like, whoa, 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 guys. And suddenly, I was kind of overwhelmed. One of the underwater naval photographers, according to the other officer, shot at least 400 feet of film.
As soon as the footage was brought to the surface, divers were instructed to hand it over.
And of course, none of them ever hear back about what they filmed or what they saw.
What happened to the film shot by those divers? And are the men in black behind its disappearance?
As the years go by, none of that testimony has been evaporated, explained, or explained away. The case remains open and unsolved. Whatever it is, wherever the answers come from, once we know we're not alone, we'll have such a greater sense of the significance of these things, of our place in the universe, and just how it works. It's still fresh and exciting to me, and I'll never give it up.